Today we are going to discuss about factory cost. In the last lecture we solved a basic problem in which we calculated prime cost of cost sheet. In addition to prime cost, the cost it includes certain factory overheads. These factory overheads consist of various materials which can be termed as indirect materials, indirect wages and other indirect expenses. These materials, wages and expenses, though they are not directly used for the production, they are used in the process of production. Okay, they are not directly attributed to the product, but they are used in the process of production, and hence they form a part of your factory cost. So what is the factory cost? It is nothing but the prime cost plus the factory overheads. So to understand this factory cost further, let us take a small problem on calculation of factory cost. Look at the problem on your screen. Following things are given and you need to find out the factory cost. Material consumed is 60,000, productive wages are 20,000, direct expenses 5,000, consumable stores 2,000, oil, grease and lubricants 500, salaries to the factory manager 6,000, unproductive wages 1,000, factory rent 2,000, repairs and depreciation to the machine 600. So let us solve this problem. Just like the last problem, you will make 3 columns here. One will be for particulars and other 2 will be for amount. In the heading we will give statement showing factory cost. Okay, statement showing factory cost, and now one by one we will put the values here. So first will be material consumed, that is 60,000. So I will write material consumed will be 60,000. The next is productive wages. This is nothing but direct wages. So productive wages 20,000. Productive wages 20,000. Next is direct expenses 5,000. So again, direct expenses means part of our prime cost. Direct expenses 5,000. Okay, so we have entered the value of direct material, direct wages and direct expenses. All these 3 things form the prime cost. So I will write over here prime cost and take a total of all these things, 60,000 plus 20,000 plus 5,000, it will come to 85,000. So prime cost is 85,000. Now we need to find out the factory cost. So for factory cost we will add factory overheads or indirect material, indirect wages and indirect expenses. So first is the indirect materials, and in indirect materials you can see 2 things which are coming over here. First is the consumable stores and second is the oil, grease and lubrications. Okay, consumable stores, oil, grease and lubrications are used in machines during the manufacturing process. These materials are not directly used in the end product, but they are used in the production process, hence they will be classified as indirect materials. So in the answer I will write indirect materials, and in the indirect material, first thing which I will be writing is the consumable stores. Consumable stores. How much is the value of consumable store? It is 2000. So consumable stores 2000. Next is oil, grease and lubrications for 500. So oil, grease and lubricants for 500. Notice that I am writing these values in the inner column for presentation purposes. Now I'll take the total of this, both of these things, and put it in the outer column. This will be the total value of your indirect materials. Similarly, we will go for indirect labor. Now in indirect labor, we can see again two things: salary for the factory manager and unproductive wages. Factory manager's salary will be treated as factory overheads, since he is managing the factory and is not directly producing anything, but he is managing the entire factory. Unproductive wages will include wages to storekeepers, to certain other persons like loaders, unloaders, etc. These people do not directly work in the production chain, but they provide ancillary or support services to the main production staff. Hence the wages paid to them will also be included in the factory overheads. So I'll add both of those things here, salary to factory manager. Now salary to factory manager, how much it is? 6000. In the inner column I will write it. Next is unproductive wages. Unproductive wages. Unproductive wages are 1000. So 1000 unproductive wages, total 7000. And the final thing which comes here is the indirect materials. So not sorry, indirect not materials, indirect expenses. Indirect materials are done, indirect labor is also done. Now we will write indirect expenses. Indirect expenses are those expenses which are incurred for production in the factory, but they are not directly attributed to the production process. Examples of indirect expenses will be factory rent, rent for machineries, repairs to machineries, depreciation to machineries. All these things will be your indirect expenses. So here we can see factory rent and repair and depreciation of machine, both of this will be included in indirect expenses. So factory rent and repairs and depreciation on machine. Okay, factory rent, repairs and depreciation on machine. How much is the factory rent? It is 2000, and repairs and depreciation on machine is 600. So 2000 and 600. Take the total of this 2600 in the outer column. Now let us see whether all the entries have been done or something remains. Okay, nothing remains. All the entries have been done for problem number 2. So now you will just take the total of this outer column. Okay, we'll just take the total 85,000 plus these amounts. So take a calculator and do this total. The total comes to 97,100, and this 97,100 is nothing but the factory cost. Okay, it is nothing but the factory cost. Just like prime cost was written in the bold, we will write this also in a bold, give it a proper border. Prime cost will be also given a proper border and a bold font. Okay, so this was the end of problem number 2.